Welcome to Focus for Me podcast, and today I have my good friend Matt GOTTESMAN with me, and today we're going to talk about just some of his past experiences when it comes to his meditation practice, his gratitude moments in practice, as well as some of the history around setting goals, some of the failures, some of the WTF moments, and we're going to have some fun. So take a listen, sit back, and enjoy today's episode. Thank you. Here with us today is Matt GOTTESMAN. Thank you, Matt. Matt is a purpose-driven entrepreneur and a leading international business strategist, brand architect focusing on luxury, lifestyle, health and wellness, cannabis, tech, fashion, and arts and entertainment. He builds powerful, impactful brands and partners with others to do the same. In the past, he's worked and partnered with some of the world's leading and prestigious brands such as Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, conglomerates such as Krug Champagne and Ruinart Champagne, as well as several others. With 2 international business degrees, including an MBA from Thunderbird, #1 school for international business, and 20 plus years of experience in internet technology and all things digital, he has a reputation for repositioning brands for high visibility and scale. Matt has built an army through his digital media brands at HDF Magazine, including his Forbes featured podcast, the Hustle Sold Separately podcast, with 3.2 million downloads, which attributes to healthy conversations around mindfulness, spirituality, creativity, and culture in business and life. He is estimated to reach roughly 10.5 million people per month. Matt, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's pretty awesome.
Thank you. I apprate it.
Yeah, of course. It's
always crazy when you hear it on the other side.
Like, you're incredible. So let's just kind of jump right in.
Sure.
I was kind of curious and just looking at knowing you a little bit. I think we've known each other for about a year now.
Yeah.
I met you about a year ago. But I'm curious to know what was it about growing up and your childhood that had you or kind of developed you into who you are now today?
In which avenue? Like in spirituality or
just kind of like
or
all
just
of
life?
it. Yeah,
just life.
Like who you are now that's developed you into who you are.
Yeah. No. I've said this before, but I have no problem sharing it again. Just paying homage to my family. My parents are very free-spirited, liberal, discover life type of people, and but they were very evenly balanced. And I've said before, my father, very disciplined, hustling, make stuff happen, anything for the family, driven individual. Like he's just going to make it happen. He wasn't so attached to outcomes as much as just making them happen. Mm-hmm. And then the flip side is my mother was very is very intuitive and holistic and spiritual, and always had a way of looking at an issue right away and saying, hey, let's try to solve this, and usually at a deeper inner level, so that way we're not carrying it for a very long time, and so when you marry those two people together, it's like you've got this. You get me. This hustling, hardworking guy, but this inward thinking, balanced, or at least always attempting to work on balance individual. Right? Yeah,
boy, if I were to describe who you are, you just literally described it, like the blend of both of your parents.
Yeah, and
not knowing either one of them. That's exactly how I see you and just who you are.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so that's yay to your parents.
Thank you. Yeah.
Making you and for. So what would you say are some of the things? What are some of the things a couple of things that highlight as moments growing up that were kind of like WTF type things for you that happened that also defined this part of who you are?
Yeah. Again, because my father taught me to always take risks, and that there isn't really any bad risks, that just outcomes that you then navigate from, right? So I dealt with quite a few. I attempted to do a startup early on, not knowing anything about, technology back then. I mean, you're going back about, 18 years now, 17 years. And everything that could have gone wrong did. Like everything at the time that, when you look back, you think, it could have gone wrong, it did. From being in business with a friend to, not knowing, how to manage the outcomes to,
Totally.
to making decisions with money to making decisions, period, all that stuff. So that was, and there was a lot learned there because there were responsibilities that my father instantly put me into where he said, just you have to work through them and do the right thing. And sometimes that's really hard when you're trying to do the right thing. Because not so much doing the right thing, but so much how it feels when you're doing the right thing. When you're owning up to mistakes and you're trying to do right by the people who invested in you and things like that. There were countless other moments too where I think WTF, or I don't know, we let it cuss, should I not?
No, totally, yeah. Please do.
WTF
That's one of my favorite words.
The what the fuck moments really, there was quite a few of them. And
I think the important thing behind that is that we all have those moments.
Yeah.
And sometimes we look at them like, what the fuck just happened?
Right.
And also, there's also like those excited parts of like, whoa, what just happened? This is super cool.
Right.
And so it's kind of flip side to both sides, but for sure, like there's some of those that define who we are and so many lessons that we learn from those kinds of moments.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really like connecting with, like just kind of sharing that common bond that we all have. Like we all have those, we all have shit that happens in our lives. And what do we do from that information that comes to us? Like, what do we do after that? So it's kind of like that. Like, what did you obviously grew from a lot of those types of moments that also defines in what you're doing now. But what were some of those things that kind of stand out from those kind of lessons?
No, I'm glad you bring that up. You're right. It does prompt you to say, what do I do now? Because I had lost a startup, lost a friend, lost a marriage, lost a big contract that I actually did completely right by and did well for, lost, other colleagues along the way. So, lost a place to live at one point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like pick an area, lost money.
Yeah.
Pick a category. And so, but the bulk of them that happened a little bit later on, they then prompted me to have to take a look at myself and start looking at patterns of the choices I'm making. It doesn't matter if I didn't inflict the situation onto myself. However, I got there came from a series of decisions that I made, right? Yeah. So I wanted to understand how to improve myself from that point on. So I started looking at, okay, how am I communicating with people up front? How am I being responsible with money? How or having more open conversations about money? I'm very integrity driven. It was instilled in me from my father. So how to have those kind of conversations up front with people or in business or with what we're trying to do if we're trying to come together. Yeah. From a relationship standpoint, how am I behaving as a man to a partner? Am I already doing those things for myself? Yeah. Because if I'm going to start looking for them in somebody else, then I've already lost. Everybody out there that's already looking for it in somebody else is already losing.
Yeah.
So
I think that's the first place to look. And I think, hopefully at some point as we start going through some of those WTF experiences in life, we start asking that question. I know for me, that was definitely some of the changing point for me. Is like, okay, when I know, I was in a relationship from 16 to 36 and none of them were, I learned great things from all of them. They were all great experiences and people. They weren't all great experiences. But I finally was like, gosh, I'm like, stop this until I actually get to know who I am. Yeah. And so it started this journey of, really asking myself some of those questions that you're talking about, like, how can I improve myself and how can I actually become a better version of myself so I can be in relationship or attract the types of relationships that I want to be in as well. So, let's see if we're going to move on with that. There was something you said. So there's something about that too, that I think part of like looking at all those life lessons, it teaches us something about resilience and starting over. And can you talk a little bit about that? Just like, what has that particular journey about that been for you? Some of your starting over moments.
We're always starting over, right? So at any stage of life, depending on a new venture, a new partnership, a new relationship, if someone's having children, right? You're always starting you're always a student.
Yeah.
So
Always.
So now I take that mindset of, if we're all always students, then let me have more fun each time I start over, but let me take into consideration all the things that I learned beforehand going into this. So now, instead of just jumping right in, I jump in more calculated. Because, like, obviously, I mean, we have to just keep going, right? You have to jump into something. You don't know all the variables, but we know a lot more variables now. So I definitely, I embrace the starting over. I feel like I'm constantly doing it yearly. And I certainly have a different, 30,000 foot view now. It's a different perspective. So often at times, I'll ask all the questions I didn't ask before.
For sure.
Right? Why am I doing this? Will this work out? What is the potential for this working out? And is that tied to why I'm doing this? What does the future of something like this look like? What are the different pieces that I need to make this happen? And then obviously, if it's a more personal level, it's how am I behaving? And how am I attracting this in the first place? Yeah. Am I prepared to be responsible for the things that I'm attracting with this because I called it in? And whatever I don't know, am I prepared to be humble enough to work through it and learn?
What would you say? Well, about what age were you when you started really being mindful of you have a choice in how much suffering you're actually experiencing in these kind of moments versus choosing, like what you just said, like I could actually choose to have more fun in these kind of experiences? Do you remember when that kind of started? When did that start to evolve in your own journey?
In the more aware category, I'd say there's about 5 different versions from 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and 40 is what I'm noticing. Yeah. Just because once you start experimenting with your choices and then seeing those outcomes fairly quickly, you start to realize, how am I asking for things?
Right.
Am I enjoying this?
Yeah.
Why did I even ask for that in the first place? Because it starts becoming more of a game.
Yeah.
So
it does.
So then now,
make it a game.
Yeah. And make it a game.
You can choose to make it a game and have a lot more fun doing it.
Yeah.
Because it is like, you hear the saying, it's like life is a game. Well, it is really a game.
Right.
Like, have fun with it. You get to choose how you get to choose not only your reality, but also you get to choose how your reaction to your reality.
So I will say, this might sound funny, but it wasn't until real recent, like something happened. I hit 40. I did hear that those are like with the wisdom years start. Literally, there's like the number 40 is a very spiritual number.
Yeah.
But it really kicked in that, oh, holy shit, we're all inside of a game. Like, I mean, I actually felt it. I said it before, but now I actually feel it.
Yeah.
I look around at how people are. Everybody's emotions are very heightened, how everybody's communicating, how everybody's flowing one way or another. What are they saying? What are they projecting? What are they everything? And you just kind of sit there and you're like, all right. Like the detachment starts happening more and the game starts being played more of like, well, where's that coming from? And I wonder what they're doing. I wonder what
you
they're
become
doing.
a lot more curious, I think. I mean, I have been a lot more curious in my 40s.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been curious, but definitely my 40s has been more of that approach. And on that same line, I remember I was probably about 42, 43, maybe even 44. And suddenly I just had this awareness that, oh, I finally have grown up. I'm finally a man.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how, like your whole life, you think, oh, I'm 18 now. I know it all. And it wasn't literally until I was about early 40s that I'm like, oh, I finally have grown up.
Yeah.
And not like grown up like I'm not a kid. I'm like, I like to be a kid and playful and all that. But so let's talk about goals for a minute, because you've set some pretty big goals in the past and you've failed and succeeded at a lot of those. So what's been, and it sounds like even with just a little bit you talked about with your parents, it set a good foundation for how you approach and set goals for yourself. But talk a little bit about, how did you first start setting goals and what were some of the first goals that you set out accomplishing?
Goals are a funny topic to me. And I still fully agree with them, but I learned the difference between goals and vision. So, and here's why: because when I was first setting goals, they were very numeric based only, and so it kind of caused me into a place of chase. So with those goals, especially in my 20s, I would when I'd make that amount of money, I'd set another goal, make that amount of money. But something didn't necessarily feel right. But for the most part, I think goals are important for in the short game of why are you doing what you're doing. And so I like this kind of game between goals and vision. If I have a vision, and what does that look and feel like? Not what is metrically there, but like,
Sure.
what does it look and feel like? What do I want my life to feel like?
Yeah, the experience you want to have.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's, how do I get to a life like that?
Yeah.
And what am I doing? Then I break things down into goals of, if these are the things I'm focused on right now, what are all the little pieces to get done for those things to get that next phase done, right?
I think it's good to have that kind of a question to when you're even sitting down looking at setting any kind of goals. Is one of my favorite questions is, what is my soul desire to experience in this moment of time that would have it be fulfilled? And then looking at, like, what are the experiences I want to have? And then setting goals like that align with that experience and with your vision is so brilliant.
It's like reverse engineering.
Totally. I mean, I think too often we set goals to fix something that we think is wrong.
Yes, there you go.
Versus really looking at, like, what is my purpose? What is my alignment with my vision? And then how do I, like you said, reverse engineer to actually set goals that are in alignment with my vision and my purpose.
Well, it also takes the pressure off. That you put that so well put. So, like, if you know you're trying to lead a very healthy, active, traveling, worldly lifestyle, then you probably have to, you start looking at your health. Let's just use that as an example. You start looking at your health, like, how are you mindset-wise? Maybe how are you body-wise?
Yeah.
You start thinking about the food. You start getting rid of, over time, the foods that aren't good for you. You start doing a certain set of exercises. You start implementing, maybe some yoga or meditation in there. Like, you do all these different things. Suddenly you have this body, but you weren't doing it from a previous of, maybe, like you said, maybe something was missing, and you're trying to solve I'm going to look good because then I'll attract a mate, or
the most common one is, like, trying to get more money or make more money to pay off debt.
Right.
Well, then, your focus is completely wrong. That's not really if you stop and really think about it, that's not what you are out to accomplish.
Right.
It's, there's an experience, an emotion that you want to have with the freedom of being able to have no debt.
Exactly.
And what does life look like from that? Like, is it in alignment more with your purpose? Yeah. So it's a complete different way of, it's not, goals are not about fixing something. It's really about, and I look at it this way too, is, from a spiritual standpoint, I look at it like the universe is your shopping cart.
Yes.
And unless you step into the grocery store,
right,
you can't put things into your shopping cart. And unless you've made a list, you also, like, you just randomly walk around. Or if you get there from a wanting standpoint because you're hungry or what have you, then you're going to put shit in there that whatever. So I think it's important to, look at what is my purpose? Why am I here? And then start putting as many things that make you happy, that bring you joy, onto that list as possible.
Such
and
a
then
great analogy.
I think it allows the opening for the universe and your guides to work with you to bring more of those types of experiences in your life. There's nothing wrong with us having things. There's nothing wrong with us having money and having lots of money, shopping, or all those things that we oftentimes have judgments about, that there's something wrong with them. Those are all part of our experience of being human. We get to have any of those things we want.
That was probably one of the best analogies because of the way you broke it down with the shopping, going into the store. It's true. How often, and I've been guilty too, where you go into the store and you're like, I'm not really sure what food I want. Yeah. So and then there's other times,
you end up with Oreo cookies and Doritos.
Yeah, you end up with all kinds of stuff. But then there's other times you know exactly what you're going to the store for.
Boom,
you have your list, and it's like a beeline straight to all the ingredients. So and then you get them.
That's also shopping like a man versus a woman. Like, when I go shopping for clothes, I know exactly what I want. I walk right to where it is. I don't pick out lots. I'm very direct and clear about. And so I think clarity is so important in not only what you're thinking and your thoughts, which is what Focus for me is all about, is like disrupting your thoughts, and also working with the universe. Because if you've I heard this analogy in a book called A Happy Pocket Full of Money, and he gives this analogy about, like, there's two people, they want to go on a trip, and so they go to the travel agent and talks about, okay, I want to go on a trip to Germany, and like, no, maybe I want to go on a trip to Spain. No, maybe I'll take a cruise. No, actually, I can't really afford it. And like that's the messaging you're giving to the universe. And there's
Right.
no way, there's no clarity in any of that. And so getting clear on what your goals are, having them written down, and then following that track. Yeah, making some adjustments, being flexible, but also checking in every now and then.
Yep.
Are these in alignment with my soul purpose? Are they bringing me joy? Are they tasky, or what have you? So what would you say? Tell us about a goal that you set early on that you're like, why did I set this goal? Like this was terrible. And what did you learn from that? I mean, really is the ending question.
Yeah, no, that's actually it's a good question because there's two. One, and I'll get to the latter one in a minute. The first one to reference back to when I did my first startup, the intention very much was to help out the music industry the way what we're seeing now. So talk about, you're going back 18 years ago, right? When like MySpace barely emerged. Because I wanted artists to own their careers more.
Oh, sure.
You know,
Yeah.
and make more money. And so I did all the research and all that other stuff. But the goal of the tech company, while I had two focuses, one was I wanted to take care of the artists, but then the other focus was, oh, I want $1 billion company. I want $1 billion
Sure.
company. I automatically put out this, you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting $1 billion company.
No.
I actually think it's very attainable depending on, you know, where you're at in your
Totally.
phase.
Yeah.
But I was chasing so much there that it didn't I wasn't clear. I wasn't clear enough, and so I wasn't seeing a lot, you know, of the bigger picture.
What would have made a difference there? Well, if you had shifted your thinking to something else, what would have made the difference there? Because you had part of the elements there,
right,
but
serving.
the focus was
Yeah.
yes,
As long as you're just serving,
right.
And
that's so important, though. I mean, because I
Right.
think too often we focus on, I want to have $1 billion company,
Right.
versus the first thing you have to focus. And it takes us forever to kind of learn these
Yeah.
kind of lessons, but man, it's got to be of service.
Yeah.
First and foremost.
And you know, and it's interesting because I also learned about the noise around you,
Yeah.
because when I serve, which feels good all the time, we were making a lot of progress. When you have a lot of other people saying, well, what are you gonna do about money? How much is it gonna make? Let's talk about profitability. And I get that these are important conversations.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it sometimes pulls us away and puts us into a different mindset than what was already effectively working.
Right.
But you do have to balance. I think you have to know numbers. You have to know
For sure.
you know, what you're getting into, but just as a reference point, not as a pressure point.
Yeah, there's
right?
a balance between being woo-woo and being like realistic, and
Right.
like a balance somewhere in the middle between you trust that it's
Right.
all going to work out,
Right.
and you also got to be clear on what's
w-
happening.
I will say the second goal, which I'm proud of, and I just want to keep
Good,
putting that out
perfect,
there in
good.
the universe.
That's one of my questions. Is like, what are you proud of?
And I have said, what the fuck did I get myself into? But at the same time, I am not backing down at all. And so when I set out 5 years ago to build all the online media, the podcast, the publications, the social, the email, I wanted and still want and still am aiming for a critical mass media company that inspires hundreds of millions of people, right? That's massive. It's big. Now, we get a reach of around 10 million or so people, impressions per month. But there are so often at times that you're like, what the fuck did I just get myself into? Because there's so many layers as you're building a media company and content, as you know. I mean, I haven't missed content in 5 years straight. But there are moments that if we're being really transparent, there are just moments that you're burning out. You can lose a passion. And I realized that was a really great lesson of, it wasn't why you always have to go back to your why.
For sure.
Because I realized the burnout wasn't so much from, this doesn't resonate with my soul anymore. Actually, quite the opposite. Actually, it's burning even harder inside. What was happening is my approach and my mindset, and the grind mode wasn't. There was no flow. It became just, how much can I like pummel the market with, and how much can I do without actually having a more systematic approach, and and then also in general taking off pressure. Like, hey, go back to having fun with all of this, and and just keep serving. And
So before we kind of move into some of your some of the other practices, talk just a little bit about that. As like, what has been, how do you kind of reset yourself when you're in the grind and you're in the hustle,
Right.
and you're doing great or you're not doing great, whatever it is. But how do you take time to reset yourself?
Yeah, over the last year and a half, 2 years, it's been much more of moving from hustle and into flow. So,
Just flow.
right, just flow. And the way I've done that is through a couple of different practices. One, learning a little bit more about meditation and diving really significantly further into that, whether morning or night. Two, learning about my creativity. So this was actually a really great growth hack for myself. So I'm very creative in the morning, but if I jump right away too much into meditation, prayer, gratitude, a whole bunch of other things, and not actually use any of that creativity, I can actually miss out on a window that is
Interesting.
very, very, so that's very appropriate for me. So
Yeah.
that was number one with the creativity. Number two was, all right, I still want that morning gratitude and some meditation. Cool. Then it's of the creativity, what I need to put that towards all newness of what I'm building, all of like, whether it's my business, whether it's, my content, something that's new, specifically that's bringing me closer towards where I'm trying to go. The admin work in my life also happens to be creative.
Oh, okay.
I was blurring the two. Like, when we do content and we do certain things, yeah, but I've gotten so good at it that I was actually using creative
Sure.
capacity on admin work. I moved all admin work to afternoons.
Nice.
So all morning work is just all the newness to directly apply the stuff that the brain has to now kind of think through. And all the afternoon work is I've already got it habitually inside.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so good. I had never really stopped to look at that. I'm the same way though. Like, it actually will organize my day a whole lot better because I'm way more creative
Yeah.
first thing, and I
Right.
know that. I know
Right.
that part, but oftentimes I'll interrupt the process
Yes.
by actually taking some time to meditate. And I think it goes back to, it doesn't have to be a particular way
That's
when
true.
it comes to meditation
Right.
and your creativity. Like, you have to look at what's best for you. A lot of people have that hardcore morning routine that they stick to, and nothing interrupts that, which is great. And at the same time, for me, meditating in the afternoon or even in the evening would work a whole lot better.
I started exploring that.
Yeah.
I started exploring afternoon and then evening right before bed.
Sure.
Because now you're putting yourself in a meditative state before you go into a sleep,
Right.
And that the soul has a whole other set of things that's going on when you're in a sleep.
Yeah.
So you're actually programming yourself ahead of time. So why not try applying it there?
And that's one of the things I like. I mean, there's so many great meditation apps out there. There's so
Yeah.
many great ways to meditate. And that's one of the things that inspires me about Focus for Me. And the concept behind it is like, you're actually reprogramming your mind, like disrupting the thoughts, the limiting beliefs, the thoughts that do not serve you. And you're plugging in all the things that currently do serve you. I mean, when you did your homework and we went through, what your goals and what your I ams are right now, and then creating those into full-on statements was, like I said, it was totally fun for me. It was like, really, I get a vision for what Matt's life is about now, and we get to share that with others. So everybody gets a vision of what your life is about and what you're up to, which is cool. So when did you start your gratitude practice, and when did you start actually noticing that gratitude is so impactful in your life?
4 years ago, I did it every day for 18 months straight. It started off on a little black book that I have some of the statements that I had in there. And as I was reading different authors, different spiritual practices, all these different ways of using the words that come out of our mouth, it started expanding into these quadrants, and then it turned into like half a page. Then it turned into a full page, and then it turned almost into 2 pages. Where then it actually started to get a little overwhelming at that point. But I liked sitting down and just doing one page. I noticed probably within the first few weeks to a month of how much the gratitude was shifting things. In fact, so much that after I slowed down or just got a little bit busy, I still do it now, but I'm actually gone back into a little bit harder again, because I noticed that it really does flip a switch on for you. And it is actually also it's your clarity. It's actually directing you ahead of the day and guiding the universe towards exactly what you want. So it's not a coincidence when things show up. You just thought of it early in the morning and you were already being grateful for it before it came.
Yeah.
You know?
I really, and I'll say this phrase probably many, many times, but I really think that gratitude is the key that opens the door to the shopping cart of the universe. And it's literally like, it's the key. I mean, I think gratitude is so critical and important to shifting and changing anything in our lives. And how do you find gratitude for yourself in situations that you just see no gratitude for?
Man, that resonated with my soul so much because like there's times literally when you want to yell at somebody, you're like,
totally,
thank you so much,
But literally, like, there's always a lesson in there somewhere. Like, what are a couple of those for you that you've noticed that you've been able to flip the switch on?
Because
we all have, relationships or partners or things like that have happened in our life where we just have the thoughts that we have about them that are not very pleasant sometimes.
Right.
And then, but how do you stop those, disrupt them, and really look at, okay, what can I really be grateful for in this situation?
I think relationships and business, which are very similar because they both rely on the same. I think business and life are basically just mirrors. But relationships are a good example. I learned this a long time ago, about 5-6 years ago. It's not about being right.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's hard.
It's very hard because it doesn't matter if you are right.
Right.
It's about your being.
Yeah.
So I learned that gratitude is a way of grounding yourself into what you already know and not reacting to what is being sometimes presented to you. Because what is being presented to you is nothing more than a quick test of like, oh, you want this up here. Can you handle this down here? Or in this moment, because I can give you might be faced with level 10 of the game. Right now we're at level 8. And at level 10, that is going to be slightly tougher on you. Yeah. So if you can start getting to a place where this is just a test, it's just an illusion, but it's a test, but it's something that is specifically designed for you, and you go, I see you. I see what's going on here. So getting to a place very quickly, gratitude will help you get there faster, so you can see what's really going on, and then once you're grateful, you feel like it's like the character in the game just like dissipates. It's gone. You're like, oh, that was, and then you're on level 9 and like the character's like twice as hard.
Yeah. I wish I would have learned gratitude early on in my divorce because it was, it took me 19 years to get to the point, when I was in doing Tony Robbins last December in Date with Destiny. And suddenly I was like, oh, wow. The gift, as he talks about, like, what is the gift in this? The gift that I can take away from my ex-wife that nobody could possibly ever take away from me. And then it just melts everything else. It grounds me into everything I think about her, is that I'm a father.
Yeah.
And I did that with her. And that's the gift among others that she gave me. But no one can ever take that away from me. And the moment I realized that, I just had so much gratitude and love and compassion for her and who she is and the kids that we share together, that everything else melted away.
So I recently lost my father, and
sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And there was a moment last week where something happened, and he's the person I always call when situations like that happen, because we talk a lot about business and life. He was really, like one of my best friends and mentors, and it's in those moments that you can't talk to that person that it actually hits you hard. You're like, oh man. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because when people are alive, or there are fights, or there's all kinds of these, high emotional frequencies happening of, just disruption or whatever, it's easy to be annoyed, right? But we never stop to take a look at all the other things that those people do for us. I was never actually really annoyed that much at my father because he's a pretty cool dude. But for the most part, like, you don't think about, it's not until someone's gone that the only things you can actually really remember of them are in moments where you would share something with them. And so it actually made me stop for a second and think about, wow, how much more grateful you have to be with the living, because otherwise we just jaded by some maybe emotional trauma we're having or emotional experience we're having where we're upset at somebody else or whatever it might be. But that's the other thing is too, is that it's like, no, there's a learning here of it's actually a test. Like, no, you actually need to be grateful.
Yeah.
So
it reminds me of our mutual friend Bradley, is like, just recently dying, and it was such a, I know for both of us because we were close to him, and you've known him so much longer than me, but it was such a in my face reminder of, and I'm grateful for all the conversations Bradley and I have. Is like they were just so present. So I mean, he just brought that life to everything that he did, and at the same time, it was like, wow, how do I take this experience of this relationship with Bradley, and how do I take that into all my relationships to show exactly what you're talking about? Like, we focus on, the BS stuff so much that we forget about all the good. And please don't wait until they're gone to be able to. There's a lot
of good happening.
There's so much good happening. And in the world, in today's world, where a lot of focus is on all that's not good, if you separate yourself from all of that and you redirect your focus, maybe it's shutting off the television, maybe it's shutting off the radio, or spending only limited amount of times on those things. But there's so much incredible goodness in the world. What are you focusing on?
Right. And to not be too hard on ourselves as well. I mean, that's
to cherish the relationships that we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
To cherish the people that are in our lives. They're in our lives for a reason.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And so that hit me hard with the gratitude of, wow, it's really more about being grateful for be grateful for exactly what you have. Mm-hmm. Most people are, and we all can be victims of this, where we're not, I shouldn't say victims. We all can encounter this where we're so focused on what we want, which we already know is counterintuitive to getting what we want, but also that we have. If you're grateful for exactly what you have, you suddenly have more of it.
For sure. Absolutely. It works every time. It literally is just the catalyst that opens up the doors to be grateful for what you have, and you will have more of it. Even if it's, you don't like the car you're driving or the house that you're in or the relationship that you're in or the job that you have, there's something to be grateful for in all of those circumstances. And the more you can be grateful in those, then it does open the doors for other things. And asking the question, hey, what is the gift in this? What is the lesson I'm to be learning right now in this experience for where I'm at? I attracted this.
It's true. There's an actual really cool trick too. Again, I think it's always, you have to trick your mind as much as possible too. Totally. If you're not automatically just susceptible to, let's just do the gratitude. But if you don't have the car you want, but you take care of the car you have so well, if you don't have maybe the bigger house that you want, but you take care of your current home so well, you're actually already creating from a future place brought present. It's even why some people who have more sometimes look at people who are may not. They're like, something about your car that I just love. There's something about your home I just love it, because you're actually appreciating what you have, and you're taking such good care of it. Mm-hmm. What do you think is going to happen when you take care of your body, your home, your relationships?
I noticed something about my car is that if I just throw trash on the floor, if I let it to get totally trashed, then I don't take care of my car. Like, I'll drive it differently. I won't take care of it. And so I'm really particular about how clean my car is inside, because it's how much time do you spend in your car, and it's a reflection. I think it's always inside your home, inside your car, inside your closets is always a reflection of like what's going on in here. And the more I can keep that clean, the more I can keep my home clean, the more I can keep my house organized and clean, the bigger reflection it is in here. And when I know that I've got clutter in my house or clutter in my drawers or clutter in my closet, there's something inside here that I need to clean out. It's always a mirror reflection. Life is always that mirror reflection that you talked about between business and personal.
And then detach, get rid of the stuff that you just no longer need, donate it, give it to people who may be in more need of it, so they can now put their appreciation on those things. You now have more space to receive what is trying to get in. It's all energy.
Flow.
It's all flow. It's all flow.
So let's talk about meditation. So what was your first experience or introduction to meditation? Because there's lots of interpretations about what meditation is and isn't.
Right. I think that I had probably tried it very, very sporadically up until about 33. You kind of hear about it.
What would you do?
I would just try like maybe something from YouTube or and I mean I still think there's actually some incredible ones I use on YouTube now
for sure, yeah.
but like somebody would maybe just refer you to here, play this CD or check this out or whatever it might have been, but I didn't. I was very like it would come from maybe doing like a yoga class, right? And they had a very the last 10 to 15 minutes are doing like a meditation, right, or something like that. So those are, or you're part of like maybe sitting in on like a circle or something.
Sure.
It wasn't until probably about maybe 3 years ago that I started going further down the rabbit hole of trying to understand meditation. I was reading different books and learning from different people. I started using different apps like Calm or Focus for Me. So I'm looking forward to that.
They're all good.
And Headspace. Just these different. I wanted to learn, transcendental, guided, like all these different ways of just getting into where my body. I started 3 years ago. I started realizing that when the body can feel it, that's when we're having impact, right? And then the hard part is everybody talks about meditation. My mother keeps asking me all the time. She's like, "I don't know how to do it," and I was like, "Well, it's different. It really is different for everybody.
It is.
Sometimes it's quieting everything. Other times it's self-reflection and or visualization, right? So I had to learn that there isn't any one way of doing it. And then I had to just find different things that work for me. So I might use a 10-minute guided just to get me into a state. And then from there, I'll use like Dr. Joe Dispenza type of, forward, feeling conditions with elevated emotions brought present.
So talk a little bit about that, because I know that's part of your practice now with meditation as Joe Dispenza. So what have you noticed inside of his teachings, and I mean, what can you share with our listeners?
Yeah, no, there's two really good ones. Now I'm still learning them and others, but there's two really good ones. There's I think we might have been talking about this recently. The energy that gets trapped down below, like all the way down like the root chakra area, and for anybody listening that's way the educators out there who are like, this guy, you guys, I applaud you. I'm still learning all this, but when the energy is trapped down there, so he has one meditation where you actually pull the energy all the way up through your chest, through your throat, through the frontal lobe, and then up to the top of the cortex. And what you do is you're clenched, like you do like a hip thrust, like you would like in sex, a hip thrust. While you're holding that, you're pulling your breath up. Then while you're holding the hip thrust, you now squeeze your lower abs.
Could you see me just do my hip thrust?
Yeah.
I was like, how does that? Right. And then you can actually feel.
Yeah, you can actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a.
So you're constantly tightening
shift.
each area. So you do the hip thrust, hold it. You bring the breath through your lower abs, hold it. You're still holding the hip thrust. The lower abs, the upper abs, holding all of that. And then you're actually visualizing, feeling the breath coming up through, because like you're breathing in. So you feel it coming up through your chest, through your throat, up here. And then eventually to the top, where like he does this little trick where you say like, use your nail and like push down on the top of your head so you can kind of feel where the top is. And picture taking the breath all the way up through there. So what happens is you're actually moving. So there's a lot of creative energy stored down there, and where your clarity is too. You're trying to move that kind of, bunched up energy up into your third eye, into your brain. Really, you're basically kind of rewiring your neurological system and your wiring into the brain, right?
So if you were to take that, what you just did while you were listening to your guided 4-minute meditation, how do you think that would shift or change the I ams that are your personal goals, your I am declarations, your soul experiences, things like that? So you take that and combine it together, how would that shift things?
You're completely reprogramming.
Yeah.
So because you're actually, if you apply the I ams and your visualization right into the breath work, it actually is having an effect on the neurological transmitters, or like the wiring of your brain. So you're in effect producing the very thing that you're meditating on presently, right? So you're instilling it more in that supposedly, and I'm already kind of starting to see it, all those things start showing up more, because that's where now you're making new capacity in your brain with those thoughts, so that way that's all that it's really focusing on. That's what rewiring does in a lot of ways, right? So now
it's not a quick fix.
It's not a. It's definitely not a quick fix. Nothing
fix.
is a quick fix, but your life can drastically change within like a few weeks to a month to like 2 months with just. I mean, that's quick compared to. I mean,
totally.
You know,
it's better than the alternative.
Well, yeah.
And it's so counterintuitive to sit and still our minds.
Yeah.
To give gratitude, to meditate, to breathe.
Yeah.
To think that we're going to transform our lives so drastically. It's.
Yeah.
You know, look at how has it been going for how many ever years that you haven't been doing that.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth the time and the effort.
There was and then there was another meditation I learned from him about when we were just talking about a second ago with the future conditions. So it's a really interesting technique where you take an area of your life, abundance, health, relationships, job, career, business, whatever it might be. You write the letter, like A for abundance, and you put a little squiggly around it, 2 squiggly lines around it to represent energy. Then you write all of the future conditions you want to have in that particular area. So you write out all the conditions, right? And then underneath there you write elevated emotions that come with having those conditions in your life. So the elevated emotions can be like freedom, happiness, peace, calmness, whatever it might be, all these things. And then those are the areas that you're focusing on during your meditation.
Yes.
And what's happening is, and you're not allowed to choose how it's supposed to happen when. No. The how and when are actually.
When, that's good. That's good.
Right.
Because a lot of people do that when. Yeah. I've been starting to leave that out because I don't like the when.
Yeah. Well, and so what happens is
I've been adding in without delay.
Yeah. Huh? Without delay. Without delay. Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Or now.
And so the coincidental thing happens, right? All of a sudden, that experience, that future conditions, all of a sudden ends up in your world, and you're like, "What did you just say?" And sure enough, it comes to fruition. But that's because you energetically were already emanating the very thing. So the other thing that happens too is that you're actually not surprised when it happens. Right. That's what starts to happen.
So go through that one more time because that was really good. So go through that. Just
so you do future conditions. Yeah. So he used a really great example that I like to use because I think you probably have a lot of people who listen that can resonate with this, where his son wanted a new job, and he said, "All right, I need you to think about all the conditions of that job. Like, what is it you're doing? And what are the activities? What is your day like? What's your pay like? All these different conditions, right? These are conditions. Then how do you feel from that? Yeah. How do you feel from that happening? And he got really specific. His son said, "Oh, I want to be a surfboard engineer. I want to work my own hours. Cool. I want to be paid, twice as much as I'm being paid now. I want to travel the world. I want to get 6 to 12 month contracts on my terms." He went all in on these conditions. And then he talked about his emotions. And I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks later, he ends up in a random store. I think it was like in Santa Barbara. And the world's foremost surfboard, architect or something or company is there. And they end up talking. He goes, "I'm looking for a surfboard engineer." And it's like literally, and he gets all the conditions that he wanted. And he almost caved because
I have goosebumps. Yeah, because that's how it works.
That's exactly how it works.
That's exactly how it works.
So he didn't know when and he didn't know how. But wouldn't you know it, the person just shows up. And I always equate it to like, look, if you want a red BMW and all of a sudden you start seeing everybody around town, you see the red BMWs everywhere. It's the same thing. It's just where your energy is going. But he takes a step further into a meditation of only having the feelings brought present. So of course it's going to just show up all of a sudden. How could it not? It happens with your relationships, everything.
That's it. That's it right there. So last question for you, and we can keep this super short, is when did you notice you started remembering who you are and what your soul purpose is?
I had glimpses of it 7 years ago because my soul hurt. Like literally, I went to my parents' rabbi. I literally said, I was like, "Hey," he's like, what can I do for you?" I'm like, "My soul hurts." So I knew.
How did you know your soul hurt?
Just I felt internally not far off my path, because I think we're always kind of adjacent
We
to
don't
it.
realize it, but we are.
Yeah, but I felt very like the Lost had a feeling internally.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was really missing the boat on a few things. There was no direction, there was no clarity, there was no peace. There was a lot of I could just feel it, and that was the first words out of my mouth. Is because I didn't know how to describe it. It's like my soul hurts. He goes, "Oh, all right, that happens. Let's start at the beginning." And then what started to happen is as I started tapping into this new world of more of like prayer and gratitude and mindfulness and meditation and writing and journaling, it just started unfolding. And I was like, oh, now I get why the journey is a process and the journey is to be loved more than the destination, because you actually start realizing that once you open yourself up, it's a channel, and you start pouring out, and then it also starts taking shape. And then as it starts taking shape, it starts revealing more of it to you. And then about 5 years ago is when, it really hit me hard.
And so now, what does your soul desire to experience in this moment of time that would have it be fulfilled?
It's finally gotten to a place of just complete truth and happiness.
Perfect.
That for me is everything. Just complete truth and happiness.
Yeah. And there's peace around all
There's
that.
all peace around that.
So much peace.
There's all peace around that. So,
brother, I love you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
This was a great conversation, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it.